Beneath the surface, May 2, 1942-1945, U-3713, Atlantic Ocean, 51-32-N, 31°17W. The rhythmic hum of the diesel engines reverberated through the cramped hull of U-3713 as Kapitan Heinrich Schulz hunched over his small desk, pen poised above the leather-bound journal. His weathered fingers trembled slightly, betraying the strain of the past few days. With a deep breath, he began to write. It has been 48 hours since we left the shores of Germany, carrying a cargo more precious and dangerous than any U-boat has ever borne. The Führer himself, along with his inner circle, now resides within our steel walls. The weight of this responsibility presses down on me, like the vast ocean above our heads. Our mission is clear, yet shrouded in uncertainty. We are to evade capture and find safe harbor. Where exactly remains unclear. South America, perhaps, or some remote island where the Reich can be reborn. The Führer speaks of grand plans, but his words are becoming as erratic as his actions. The crew is on edge. They are loyal men, handpicked for this mission, but the presence of our special passengers has created an atmosphere of unease. The U-boat, designed for a crew of 50, now strains to accommodate over 60 souls. The air is thick with tension and the acrid smell of too many bodies in too small a space. Schulz paused, his pen hovering over the page. He glanced at the small mirror affixed to the bulkhead, barely recognizing the haggard face that stared back at him. Dark circles ringed his steel-gray eyes, and his once meticulously trimmed beard had grown unkempt. He continued writing. I fear sleep, for in those brief moments of rest, I am plagued by nightmares. The faces of the men I've killed, the ships I've sunk, they all come back to haunt me. But now, they are joined by new terrors, visions of discovery of depth charges raining down upon us, of the cold, dark water rushing in to claim us all. And yet these nightmares pale in comparison to the waking horror that surrounds me. The Führer's madness seems to grow with each passing hour. His ranting echoes through the boat, punctuated by Eva Braun's attempts to soothe him. The Goebbels family presents its own unique horror, Joseph's fanatical gleam, Magda's icy determination, and their children. God help me, those poor, innocent children. A sharp rap at the door startled Schulz from his writing. Herr Kapitan, came the muffled voice of his first officer, Oberleutnant Werner Krause. You're needed in the control room. Jawohl, Schulz replied, closing the journal and securing it in a locked drawer. He took a moment to compose himself, straightening his wrinkled uniform before stepping out into the narrow corridor. The U-boat was a hive of controlled chaos. Crewmen moved with practiced efficiency in the confined space, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and barely concealed fear. As Schulz made his way forward, he passed the makeshift quarters that had been hastily arranged for their high-ranking passengers. Through a partially open door, he caught a glimpse of Adolf Hitler, the man who had once held Europe in his iron grip, now reduced to a trembling, paranoid shell. The Führer was huddled in a corner, muttering to himself as Eva Braun tried to coax him into eating. Their eyes met briefly, and Schulz felt a chill run down his spine at the madness he saw reflected there. Further along, he heard the hushed voices of Joseph and Magda Goebbels. Their words were too low to make out, but the tone was one of urgent conspiracy. A child's laugh, incongruously cheerful in the oppressive atmosphere, drifted from within the cabin. Schulz quickened his pace, unable to bear the sound of innocence in this den of monsters. As he approached the control room, Schulz steeled himself. Whatever news awaited him, he knew it would only add to the burden he already carried. The fate of the Reich, or what remained of it, rested on his shoulders and the sturdy hull of U-3713. Oberleutnant Krauser snapped to attention as Schulz entered the control room. "Report," Schulz ordered, his voice gruff from lack of sleep. "Kapitan, our hydrophones have picked up propeller noise," Kraus said, his face taut with concern. "British destroyers by the sound of it, at least 2, possibly 3. Schulz felt his stomach tighten. "Distance and bearing?" "Approximately 20 nautical miles, bearing 057. They appear to be conducting a search pattern." "Verdammt," Schulz muttered. He studied the charts spread out on the plotting table, his mind racing through their options. They were too far from the continental shelf to seek refuge in deeper waters, and surfacing was out of the question. "Maintain current depth and speed," he ordered. "Rig for silent running." As the orders were relayed and the crew moved to comply, Schulz felt the familiar mix of fear and exhilaration that came with evasive action. This, at least, was familiar territory. Here, he was not responsible for the twisted dreams of madmen or the lives of innocent children. Here, he was simply a U-boat commander, matching wits with the enemy in the deadly game of cat and mouse that had defined the Battle of the Atlantic. But even as he took comfort in the familiar routine, a new unsettling thought crept into his mind. What if, this time, it would be better to be found? To end this ill-fated voyage before it could reach whatever grim conclusion Hitler and his followers envisioned? Schulz pushed the treasonous thought aside, focusing instead on the immediate task of keeping U-3713 and its passengers hidden from the probing sonar of the British destroyers. As the U-boat slid silently through the dark waters of the Atlantic, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just fleeing from enemy ships, but from something far more terrifying, a reckoning that would come for them all, sooner or later. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. The crew moved about in hushed whispers, every unnecessary sound muffled. In the suffocating silence, Schulz imagined he could hear the ping of enemy sonar, searching for them in the vast emptiness of the ocean. His nerves stretched to the breaking point. He found himself straining to hear anything, the scrape of a depth charge being rolled into the water, the ominous creaking of the hull under pressure. As the danger slowly passed and the propeller noises faded into the distance, Schulz felt no relief. Instead, a new kind of dread settled over him. They had evaded detection this time, but for how long? And what horrors awaited them even if they succeeded in their escape? With a heavy heart, Schulz returned to his cabin. He pulled out his journal once more, needing to put his turbulent thoughts to paper. We have avoided detection, but at what cost? Each passing hour feels like a step further into the abyss. The madness that has taken hold of the Führer seems to be seeping into every corner of this boat. I fear it will consume us all before the enemy ever has a chance to find us. God forgive me, but there are moments when I wonder if it wouldn't be better to scuttle the boat, to end this nightmare before it can spread further. But I am a German officer, bound by duty and honor. I will see this mission through, whatever the cost. Yet, as I write these words, I cannot shake the feeling that we are not merely fleeing across the ocean, but descending into the very depths of hell itself. And I, Heinrich Schulz, am the ferryman, guiding this damned vessel and its cursed passengers into the unknown horrors that surely await us. With a shaking hand, Schulz closed the journal. The U-boat continued its silent journey through the dark waters, carrying its cargo of madness and faded glory ever deeper into the vast, unforgiving Atlantic.